There's a moment in life when everything changes. When you realize that the greatest prison we build isn't made of steel and concrete, but of expectations. I stood in my kitchen one morning, staring at a note my daughter had left me. "Dad, I can't be who you want me to be." 7 words that shattered my world and rebuilt it anew. You see, we're gathering here today to confront perhaps the most challenging truth we'll ever face. The art of loving people for who they are, not who we want them to be. This isn't just another feel-good message. It's a revolution of the heart that will transform every relationship in your life. Think about the people you love most in this world. Your spouse, your children, your parents, your closest friends. Now, let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. How many times today did you silently wish they were different? How many times did you think, if only they were more organized, if only they were more ambitious, if only they were more like me? We carry these expectations like heavy stones in our pockets, weighing us down, preventing us from dancing freely in our relationships. And here's the painful truth. Every time we wish someone was different, we're telling them our love comes with conditions. We're saying, "I'll love you more if..." But true love, the kind that transforms lives and heals wounds, has no if. It has no but. It has no when you change. I've spent decades studying human behavior and relationships, and I've discovered something remarkable. The moment we release our expectations of others, we don't just free them. We free our... It's like putting down a heavy backpack we've been carrying for years, not realizing how much it's been hurting us. Let me share something profound with you. In the grand tapestry of existence, each person is a unique thread woven exactly as they should be. When we try to change that thread, when we pull at it, try to dye it a different color, or wish it was silk instead of cotton, we don't improve the tapestry. We risk unraveling it entirely. Every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. That colleague who seems disorganized, they might be caring for a sick parent. That friend who can't seem to commit, they might be healing from wounds you can't see. That teenager who seems rebellious, they might be trying to find their voice in a world that keeps telling them to be quiet. The real question isn't why people are the way they are. The real question is, why do we resist accepting them as they are? I remember counseling a couple on the verge of divorce. The husband, a successful executive, couldn't understand why his wife wouldn't get herself together and pursue a career like he had. The wife, an artist at heart, felt suffocated by his expectations. They were both good people, but their love had become tangled in a web of expectation. For 1 week, I asked them to write down every time they wished their partner was different. By the end of the week, they had pages filled with expectations. And then I asked them something that changed everything. What if all these expectations are the very thing preventing you from seeing the beauty of who your partner truly is? This is where real transformation begins. It starts with understanding that our expectations often say more about us than they do about others. When we expect someone to be different, we're really saying, "I don't feel secure unless you behave in a way that makes me..." But we release our expectations when we love people exactly as they are. Something magical happens. They feel safe enough to grow, to evolve, to become more fully themselves. Not because we demanded it, but because we created the space for it. Think about a garden. You can't force a rose to become a sunflower. You can't demand that a daisy grow taller. What you can do is provide the right conditions, sunlight, water, nutrients, and then step back and let nature work its magic. People are no different. Let me be clear. Accepting people as they are doesn't mean accepting abusive or harmful behavior. It doesn't mean becoming a doormat or losing your own boundaries. Instead, it means seeing people clearly, understanding their humanity, and choosing to love them within healthy boundaries. This journey of acceptance begins with a simple but powerful shift in perspective. Instead of asking, "Why can't they be different?" start asking, "What can I learn from who they are?" Instead of focusing on what's missing, start noticing what's already there. I've seen this principle transform the most troubled relationships. Parents who learn to accept their children's different paths in life. Spouses who discovered renewed love when they stopped trying to change each other. Friends who deepen their bonds when they release their judgments. The truth is, we're all works in progress, walking our own paths at our own pace. When we try to force someone to walk our path, we're not helping them, we're hindering their journey. And in doing so, we're missing the opportunity to learn from their unique perspective, their unique gifts, their unique way of being in the world. Every person you meet is a teacher, bringing exactly the lessons you need to learn. That person who frustrates you the most, they might be your greatest teacher. That relationship that challenges your expectations, it might be your path to growth. Take a moment right now and think about someone in your life who you've been trying to change. Feel the weight of those expectations. Now imagine releasing them one by one like balloons floating into the sky. Feel the lightness that comes with acceptance. Feel the freedom that comes with loving without conditions. This is where true power lies, not in changing others, but in changing our response to others. Not in demanding that people meet our expectations, but in expanding our capacity to love beyond our expectations. Remember, the greatest gift you can give another person is the permission to be exactly who they are. When you do this, you're not just changing your relationships, you're changing the world. Because every person who feels truly accepted, truly loved for who they are, becomes a light that brightens the lives of others. As we continue this journey together, I want you to hold on to this truth. The people in your life are not projects to be fixed or puzzles to be solved. They are souls to be witnessed, hearts to be understood, and stories to be honored. And in honoring their story, you write a more beautiful chapter in your own. You know what's fascinating about human nature? We often love people the way we think they need to be loved, instead of the way they need to be loved. We project our own needs, our own wounds, our own expectations onto them, and then wonder why our love isn't received the way we intended. I witnessed this transformation in a school system where teachers were struggling with what they called problem students. These educators were dedicated, passionate people who wanted the best for their students, but they were exhausted from trying to make every child fit into the same mold of what a good student should be. Then something remarkable happened. One teacher decided to try a different approach. Instead of trying to change her students, she started accepting them exactly as they were. The fidgety boy who couldn't sit still. She gave him space to move while learning. The quiet girl who never raised her hand, she found other ways to let her participate. The class troublemaker, she looked beneath the behavior to understand the pain driving it. And you know what happened? Those children began to bloom, not because she fixed them, but because she created an environment where they felt safe to be themselves. They started learning better, not because they changed who they were, but because we grow best when we feel accepted. We change most when we feel no pressure to change. It's one of life's beautiful paradoxes. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. Accepting people as they are requires us to face our own insecurities, our own need for control, our own fears. It requires us to ask ourselves some challenging questions. Why do we feel threatened when someone chooses a different path than the one we would choose? Why do we assume our way is the right way? Why do we confuse love with control? The answer often lies in our own story. We try to change others because we're uncomfortable with parts of ourselves. We project our unfulfilled dreams onto our children. We push our partners to become who we think we need them to be because we're afraid of facing our own needs. Every time you feel the urge to change someone, it's an invitation to look within. It's an opportunity to ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? What am I trying to control? What part of myself am I not accepting? This journey of accepting others begins with accepting ourselves. It's about understanding that just as we are perfectly imperfect, so are others. Just as we have the right to grow at our own pace, so do they. Just as we have the right to make our own choices, so do they. Think about the last time someone truly accepted you exactly as you were. Remember how that felt? Like finally being able to breathe after holding your breath for too long? Like finding solid ground after walking on eggshells? That's the gift we can give to others. But here's where many of us get stuck. We think accepting people means approving of everything they do. We worry that if we accept someone as they are, we're enabling negative behavior. Let me be clear, acceptance doesn't mean approval. It means acknowledging reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. You can accept that someone is angry without accepting their aggressive behavior. You can accept that someone is different from you without compromising your own values. You can accept someone's choice while still maintaining healthy boundaries. This is what I call conscious acceptance. The ability to see people clearly, love them fully, and maintain your own integrity at the same time. When you plant a garden, you accept that each plant has its own nature. You don't expect a cactus to need the same care as an orchid. You don't get angry at a rose for having thorns. You work with the nature of each plant, providing what it needs to thrive. The same principle applies to human relationships. Each person has their own nature, their own timing, their own path. Our job isn't to change their nature, but to create conditions where their true nature can flourish. I've seen this principle transform businesses where leaders learned to leverage their employees' natural strengths instead of trying to fix their weaknesses. I've seen it heal families where parents learn to celebrate their children's unique gifts instead of molding them into predetermined roles. I've seen it revitalize communities where people learn to embrace diversity instead of demanding conformity. But perhaps the most powerful transformation happens in intimate relationships. When we stop trying to change our partners, when we release the mental image of who we think they should be, we create space for real intimacy to grow. How much energy do you spend trying to change the people you love? How much time do you waste wishing they were different? What could happen if you redirected that energy toward understanding them instead? This is where real love begins, in the space between who someone is and who we think they should be. It's in that space that we make a choice. Will we fill it with judgment and expectations, or will we fill it with acceptance and understanding? The truth is, every person you meet is on their own hero's journey. They're fighting their own battles, learning their own lessons, walking their own path. When we try to control their journey, we're not helping them. We're hindering their growth. Instead of trying to be someone's teacher, be their witness. Instead of trying to be their critic, be their supporter. Instead of trying to be their judge, be their ally. The people in your life are not raw material waiting to be shaped into your vision. They are masterpieces in progress, painting their own canvas, writing their own story. Your role is not to direct their story, but to appreciate it, not to rewrite their script, but to support their performance. As we move forward, I want you to consider this question. What would your relationships look like if you replaced expectation with acceptance? What would change if you stopped trying to fix people and started trying to understand them? What miracles might unfold if you gave others the same grace you wish to receive? When we release our expectations of others, we don't just free them. We free ourselves. We free ourselves from the exhausting task of trying to control the uncontrollable. We free ourselves from the disappointment of unmet expectations. We free ourselves to love more fully, more authentically, more powerfully than ever before. Let's talk about something that happens in the quiet moments when we're alone with our thoughts. It's that persistent voice that whispers, if only they would change, everything would be perfect. That voice has probably been with you so long you might think it's... But today, we're going to challenge that voice. I remember working with a successful businessman who had everything society told him he should want. A thriving company, a beautiful home, material abundance. But he was profoundly unhappy because his son had chosen a different path in life. He wanted his son to take over the family business, to follow in his footsteps. His son wanted to be a musician. Every conversation between them became a battlefield of unmet expectations. Every family dinner turned into a silent war of disappointment, until one day, this father had an epiphany that changed. He realized he wasn't just losing his dream of his son taking over the business. That's when he made a choice that would transform their relationship forever. He decided to attend one of his son's performances, not to judge, not to criticize, not to hope that his son would get it out of his system, but to truly see his son for the first time. And what he saw changed him forever. He saw passion. He saw dedication. He saw artistry. He saw his son truly alive, truly himself. In that moment, He realized that his son hadn't rejected his values. He had found his own. He wasn't throwing away his potential. He was fulfilling it in his own way. This is the miracle that happens when we stop trying to change people and start trying to see them. Really see them, not through the lens of our expectations, not through the filter of our desires, but through the clear glass of acceptance. By kind of trying to be, think about the relationships in your life right now. How many of them are strained because you're holding on to an image of who you think someone should be? How many connections are fraying because you're trying to force a square peg into a round hole? Every time you reject someone for who they are, you're really rejecting the opportunity to grow. Every time you try to change someone, you're missing the chance to change yourself. Let me share something that might shift your perspective forever. People are not in your life to fulfill your expectations. They're in your life to teach you about acceptance, about love, about letting go of control. They're in your life to show you parts of yourself you might never see otherwise. That person who drives you crazy with their different way of doing things. They're teaching you about flexibility. That friend who never seems to follow your advice are teaching you about humility. That family member who keeps making choices you don't understand, they're teaching you about. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you truly accept people as they are, something magical happens. The energy you used to spend trying to change them becomes available for your own growth. The frustration you felt about their shortcomings transforms into curiosity about their unique perspective. I've seen this principle work miracles in the most unlikely places. In prisons where acceptance helped break cycles of violence. In hospitals where accepting patients as whole people, not just their illnesses, accelerated. In schools where accepting children's different learning styles opened up new pathways to education. But perhaps the most profound transformation happens within families. When parents learn to accept their children's authentic selves, when spouses learn to embrace each other's differences, when siblings learn to celebrate their unique paths, that's when families become sanctuaries of growth instead of battlegrounds of expectation. Let me offer you a powerful practice that can transform your relationships starting today. I call it the sacred pause. The next time you feel the urge to change someone, to correct them, to make them more like you, pause. In that pause, ask yourself 3 questions. What am I afraid would happen if I accepted this person exactly as they are? What part of myself am I not accepting that I'm projecting onto them? What might I learn if I chose curiosity instead of judgment? These questions can be uncomfortable. They're meant to be. Because real growth happens in the space of discomfort. Real love grows in the soil of acceptance, especially when that acceptance challenges our preconceptions. Every person you meet is a universe of experiences, dreams, fears, and hopes that you know nothing about. When you try to change them, you're essentially saying, my limited understanding of who you should be is more important than the entirety of who you are. But when you accept people as they are, you open yourself to the wonder of their unique universe. You create space for genuine connection, for real understanding, for love that doesn't demand changes but celebrates authenticity. This doesn't mean you'll always understand people's choices. You won't. It doesn't mean you'll always agree with their decisions. You won't. It doesn't mean you'll always feel comfortable with their way of being. You won't. But that's not what acceptance is about. Acceptance is about acknowledging that your understanding, your agreement, your comfort are not prerequisites for someone else's right to be who they are. Think about the most meaningful relationships in your life. Chances are they're with people who accept you as you are, who love you not in spite of your quirks, but including them, who see your flaws not as problems to be fixed, but as that's the kind of love we're talking about creating. That's the kind of acceptance we're learning to offer. That's the kind of relationship we're learning to build. As we continue this journey together, I want you to remember this. Every person you meet is either a lesson or a teacher in the art of acceptance. Every relationship is an opportunity to practice this profound truth. Every interaction is a chance to choose love over expectation, understanding over judgment, acceptance over control. Because in the end, the greatest gift we can give another person is the freedom to be exactly who they are. And the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the peace that comes from releasing the need to make them different. There comes a moment in every relationship when we face a choice. Will we choose the comfort of our expectations, or will we choose the courage of acceptance? This choice isn't made once, it's made again and again, in small moments and large ones, in quiet conversations and heated arguments, in celebrations and disappointments. I spent time in a retirement community listening to the wisdom of those who had lived long and loved deeply. One elderly woman shared something that stopped me in my tracks. She said, "I spent 40 years trying to change my husband. Then one day I realized he wasn't going to change. And that's when our real marriage began." This isn't a story about resignation. It's a story about revelation. When we stop trying to change people, we start seeing them, really seeing them. And in that seeing, we discover something extraordinary. The very things we've been trying to change might be the things that make them uniquely beautiful. You know, acceptance is not passive. It's not giving up. It's not surrendering your own values or compromising your boundaries. Acceptance is active, it's courageous, it's revolutionary. Think about water for a moment. When water meets an obstacle, it doesn't try to force the obstacle to change. It doesn't get angry at the obstacle for being in its way. Instead, it flows around it, finding new paths created. Water doesn't lose its essence by accepting it fulfills its essence. You too can be like water in your relationships. You can learn to flow around differences instead of crashing against them. You can learn to find new paths to connection instead of forcing old ones that don't work. To accept others as they are, we must first face our own fears. What are we really afraid of when we try to change people? Are we afraid of being out of control? Are we afraid of being wrong? Are we afraid of what it means about us if we accept them as they are? I worked with a mother who was devastated because her daughter chose a different spiritual path than the one she was raised in. This mother's fear wasn't really about religion. It was about connection. She feared that if she accepted her daughter's different beliefs, she would lose her completely. By trying to change her daughter's beliefs, she was creating the very distance she feared. When she finally found the courage to accept her daughter's spiritual journey, their relationship deepened in ways she never expected. They could talk about their different beliefs with curiosity instead of judgment. They could share their spiritual experiences with openness instead of fear. What we fear will divide us often becomes the very thing that connects us when we approach it with an open heart. Let me offer you a powerful practice I call the mirror of acceptance. When you find yourself wanting to change someone, turn that desire inward. Ask yourself, what would it feel like to accept myself exactly as I am in this moment? What parts of myself am I trying to change through changing others? What gifts might be hidden in the very differences I'm trying to eliminate? This practice isn't about self-judgment. It's about self-awareness. Because often, our desire to change others is really a displaced desire to change ourselves. Every person in your life is a mirror, reflecting back to you your own capacity for acceptance. The traits that irritate you most in others might be the very traits you're struggling to accept in yourself. The changes you're trying to force in others might be the changes you're afraid to make in your own life. When you learn to accept yourself fully, accepting others becomes natural. When you embrace your own imperfections, others' imperfections stop feeling like personal affronts. When you give yourself permission to be exactly who you are, you naturally extend that permission to others. I've seen this principle transform the most troubled relationships. A father who learned to accept his own vulnerability could finally accept his son's sensitivity. A woman who embraced her own ambition could finally support her sister's different choices. A man who acknowledged his own fears could finally understand his partner's caution. This is what real love looks like. Not the sanitized Hollywood version where everyone changes to meet our expectations, but the raw, real, revolutionary love that says, I see you, I accept you, I celebrate you exactly as you are. Think about the people in your life right now. What if, just for today, you decided to be radically accepting? What if you approached each person with curiosity instead of judgment. What if you replaced "you should" with "tell me more"? The practice of acceptance doesn't mean you'll never feel frustrated. You will. It doesn't mean you'll never wish things were different. You will. It doesn't mean you'll never struggle with others' choices. You will. But it does mean you'll have a new way to handle these feelings. Instead of letting them drive you to try to change others, let them guide you toward greater understanding. Instead of seeing differences as problems to be solved, see them as opportunities for growth. Every time you accept someone exactly as they are, you create a safe space for them to become who they're meant to be. Not because you demanded it, not because you engineered it, but because you created the conditions for natural growth through acceptance. This is true power. The power to create space for others to evolve naturally in their own time, in their own way. The power to love without conditions. The power to connect deeply even across differences. As we continue this journey together, I want you to hold on to this truth. The people in your life are not problems to be solved. They are mysteries to be explored, stories to be understood, souls to be cherished. And in accepting them exactly as they are, you don't just transform your relationships. Because ultimately, this journey of acceptance isn't just about how we love others. It's about how we love life itself, with all its imperfections, all its surprises, all its unmet expectations turned into unexpected gifts. It's about embracing the magnificent mess of human relationships, knowing that within that mess lies the very beauty we've been seeking all along. As we draw our time together to a close, I want to share something profound with you. Something that has the power to revolutionize every relationship in your life. It's a truth so simple yet so transformative that once you truly understand it, you'll never see relationships the same way again. Every single person you meet is carrying a universe within them. A universe of hopes, dreams, fears, and experiences that you can never fully know. And when we try to change someone, we're essentially saying that our limited understanding of who they should be is more valuable than the entire universe of who they are. I witnessed this truth unfold in a remarkable way. In a corporate environment, there was a team leader who was frustrated with one of his team members. This employee was quiet, introverted, and preferred working alone. The opposite of the collaborative, outgoing culture the leader was trying to create. For months, the leader tried to change this employee's working style, pushing them to be more outgoing, more verbal in meetings, more like everyone else. The results were predictable: decreased productivity, increased stress, and a relationship strained to the breaking point. Then something changed. The leader attended a workshop on different working styles and had an epiphany. He realized that his employee's quietness wasn't a deficit. It was a different way of processing information and contributing to the team. When he finally accepted this truth and reorganized the work to leverage his employees' natural strengths, everything transformed. The employees' productivity soared, and more importantly, their unique perspective started adding value in ways nobody had anticipated. This is the miracle that happens when we stop trying to change people and start trying to understand them. When we release our grip on who we think they should be and open our hearts to who they actually are. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. It requires us to face our own insecurities, our own need for control, our own fears. It requires us to ask ourselves some challenging questions. Why do we feel threatened by differences? Why do we assume our way is the right way? Why do we confuse love with control? The answer often lies in our own story. We try to change others because we're uncomfortable with parts of ourselves. We project our unfulfilled dreams onto our children. We push our partners to become who we think we need them to be because we're afraid of facing our own needs. Every time you feel the urge to change someone, it's an invitation to look within. It's an opportunity to ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? What am I trying to control? What part of myself am I not accepting? Think about the relationships in your life right now. How many of them are strained because you're holding on to an image of who you think someone should be? How many connections are fraying because you're trying to force a square peg into a round hole? The path forward is clear, though not always easy. It begins with a simple but profound shift in perspective. Instead of asking, why can't they be different? Start asking, what can I learn from who they are? Instead of focusing on what's missing, start noticing what's already there. This is what real love looks like. Not the sanitized, perfect version where everyone changes to meet our expectations, but the raw, real, revolutionary love that says, I see you, I accept you, I celebrate you exactly as you. As we conclude our time together, I want to leave you with a challenge that could transform every relationship in your life. For the next week, practice radical acceptance. When you feel the urge to change someone, pause, take a deep breath. And instead of trying to fix them, try to understand them. Remember, every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Every difference that frustrates you is an opportunity to grow in acceptance. Every relationship is a teacher in the art of unconditional love. The truth is, we're all walking this earth doing the best we can with what we know. Some of us are loud, some are quiet, some of us are dreamers, some are doers, some of us take the well-worn path, others forge new trails. And every single one of these ways of being is valid, valuable, and worthy of acceptance. When you embrace this truth, something magical happens. The energy you use to spend trying to change others becomes available for your own growth. The frustration you felt about their shortcomings transforms into curiosity about their unique perspective. The relationships that felt like projects become partnerships in mutual growth and understanding. Think about it. What would your relationships look like if you replaced expectation with acceptance? What would change if you stopped trying to fix people and started trying to understand them? What miracles might unfold if you gave others the same grace you wish to receive? When we release our expectations of others, we don't just free them, we free ourselves. We free ourselves from the exhausting task of trying to control the uncontrollable. We free ourselves from the disappointment of unmet expectations. We free ourselves to love more fully, more authentically, more powerfully than ever before. As you leave here today, carry this wisdom in your heart. The greatest gift you can give another person is the permission to be exactly who they are. When you do this, you're not just changing your relationships, you're changing the world. Because every person who feels truly accepted, truly loved for who they are, becomes a light that brightens the lives of others. Remember, love doesn't demand change. It invites growth through acceptance. Understanding doesn't require agreement. It requires openness. And relationships don't thrive on perfection. They thrive on acceptance. The journey of accepting others as they are is really a journey of coming home to ourselves. It's a journey of realizing that in our differences lies our beauty, in our uniqueness lies our strength, and in our acceptance of each other lies our collective power to transform the world. Let this be the day you choose acceptance over expectation, understanding over judgment, and love over fear. Let this be the day you begin to see people not as you wish they were, but as they truly are. You're perfectly imperfect, beautifully human, and worthy of acceptance exactly as they are. Because in the end, the greatest revolution we can create is not in changing others, but in changing how we love them. And that revolution begins with 3 simple words. I accept. Go forth and love boldly, accept fully, and create relationships that celebrate the magnificent diversity of human existence. The world needs your acceptance, your understanding, and your love. Now more than ever before.